and it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague in my department. My name is Drew Jameson, by the way, for those of you that don't know me. I am core faculty with the Marriage and Family Therapy department. And again, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today for our April FDI training event. And again, Jackie Halstead is my colleague in my department and also a friend of mine. So let me share with you a little bit more about Jackie, and then I will turn it over to her. Jackie Halstead has been with ACU Dallas since 2016. She's now serving as the Associate Director for the Marriage and Family Therapy online program. She was on the residential campus from 1998 to 2010 and served as the Program Director and Department Chair for the MFT program there. On the side, she runs the Selah Center for Spiritual Formation. This is a nonprofit that offers a certificate program in spiritual direction and online courses in Christian spiritual disciplines and other spiritual topics. Dr. Halstead has been a licensed marriage and family therapist for the past 36 years, specializing in ministers and their families, and she has been a spiritual director for 20 years. She speaks frequently on the topics of holistic well-being, mental health, relationships, contemplative prayer, and spiritual formation at the national and international levels. Jackie has been married to Randy for 41 years, and they live in Nashville, Tennessee. They have two grown daughters, Erin, who's married to Stephen, and Ashley, and most important, as she says, granddaughter Jocelyn, who, as I met with Jackie on Monday, she got to spend the weekend with this past weekend.
That's right.
I think she has
filled my cup.
Very much re-energized. So as I said, it's my pleasure to turn over. I'm really looking forward to this time. Very good timing for me. I look forward to hearing Jackie present. It's often that she's in the airport during our faculty meetings because she's traveling to go speak and present somewhere. So it's our privilege to have her with us today. I will turn it over to you, Jackie.
Wow, Drew, thank you. Very kind introduction. Oh, sorry about that. So, as you know, in our here for, why won't that change to the, okay. As you know, in our here for, my topic is attending to burnout, and thank you for coming. I think this topic hits all of us, and I am speaking to it from personal experience. I've been through burnout probably more than once, and so it's very important to me personally to address it, but also I hope it is helpful to you. You know, this is a busy job. Academia is brutal at times, and so we can have some agency in dealing with this. So that's what we're talking about today. So some definitions first, and this is from the literature. Long-term stress and diminished interest with detachment and lower effectiveness. A progressively worsening condition that makes effective job performance difficult due to feelings of hopelessness and a non-supportive environment. Experience of job-related difficulties while performing a job where there's increasing stress, resulting in a declining energy level and a sense of exhaustion. And then finally, well, a couple more, can include symptoms of fatigue, headaches, eating disorder, insomnia, emotional instability, and this is one I just want to pause on for a minute, you can lose your buffer. So as we all know and probably have experienced, it's a season of weariness, tiredness, trying to go through the same motions of perhaps something we've done for years, but lacking the feelings of motivation, initiative that we've always had. And this last piece, losing the buffer, is an important one, because what happens after we deal with burnout is we lose that gradual incline into frustration or into weariness or exhaustion that usually before we would start to be faced with stuff and it would take a while for us to really get to the point of this exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. But following a season of burnout, we go from 0 to 60. We're right there immediately. And so that is a very important indicator that you're in burnout or immediately have come out of burnout, is if you've lost that buffer. So we'll spend some more time talking about that. But it's important to think about this piece, that burnout is often believed to be exhaustion resulting from your high volume of work. But in contrast, it's actually a lack of meaning that happens tied to feelings of hopelessness and a lack of support. So whether that is real or subjective, if I feel hopeless about what I'm doing or that I'm not being supportive in the hard work I'm doing, I'm going to experience burnout. So that's an important piece. It isn't necessarily tied to having a very busy job. A lot of us do that and we can relish that. We can love that. You know, we're energized when we get to dive in. And even though it's long days, we still feel motivated and satisfied in what we're doing. But when we start to feel some hopelessness and lack of support, that's when it kicks in. So we're going to talk about burnout in relation to 4 areas of support that we need in order to have a healthy, vibrant work context or success in what we're doing. So the first is esteem support. Am I valued? And we'll talk about each of these specifically. The second is emotional support. Do I have friends with whom I can let down, who I can be myself with, and who I feel have my back? Am I compensated appropriately? Do I feel like I'm getting what I need in order to live as I do my job? And then informational support. Do I have what I need? That's information, resources, etc., in order to do my job well. So those 4 areas are needed. So let me start with a short example from my life. So I was in I won't talk about academia, but I was in for a year, I stepped out of the academic life to work as the director of education and programming for a large retreat center. And I loved what I got to do there. I loved creating program. I had 5 associate directors who worked under me and each had their own area, and it was fun to work with them. I thought we were doing some good. There was a lot of meaning in it. But my supervisor, the executive director of the retreat center, was very difficult to work with. And she was never happy with what any of us on the leadership team were doing. She would pit us against each other, made it difficult for us to have friendships with each other, although we did in some cases regardless. And she would use the information we needed in a punitive way, that if she wasn't happy with what we were doing, she would withhold information things. So you can see it kind of hit some of those areas we were talking about. And I went through burnout there. It was pretty quick. Within about 6 months of being there, I was really struggling with burnout. So I'll refer back to that as I talk about these, for example. And I do want to let you know, I will be allowing for questions in a few minutes here. So esteem support. is about recognizing my value in what I do. And obviously the best scenario is if my supervisor values me, is letting me know they value what I do and my work and what I contribute. That's the best. But it's also really important that I know my value, that day in and day out, I know I'm making a difference. I'm doing some good. And it doesn't matter what type of job I do. It's do I recognize that I'm contributing in a meaningful way to the world? And then, so as we look at it, it's this recognizing my own value, but it's also recognizing God's value of me. And as people of faith, we have this advantage that we are made in God's image. And we know, or hopefully we know, that God values us. So even if I may not feel valued on the work setting, I know that God made me for a purpose and is using me as an instrument. It may be on the job site, or it might be at home or with my other relationships. But I know inherently I have value. And so that comes from spending time with God, so I can learn that as I am with God. And then it's also about doing things that give me life, that fill me up, that bless me. And so that's both things on the job and it's things outside of the job. But, some of the ancient church fathers and mothers talk about, if kind of a standard practice is whatever gives you life, do more of it. What takes life from you, do less of it. And we don't always have that option, but we can always find things to do in our job. And it might just be stepping outside for 10 minutes. It might be telling a colleague, I appreciate what they're doing. There are things we can do that give us life. And there are things that we can step away from that take life from us. Now, of course, that's not entirely possible in our jobs. There's always things that are life-sucking. But as much as we do, we want to balance these two things, do more of what gives us life, do less of what takes life from us, in order to feel that we're being used well, that we fit well in what we're doing here. The next is emotional support, and this is about developing a support network. And so it's not just people who I work with, although that's really good, but it needs to be people who I know love me, support me, that I can be myself with, who will say the hard things to me when I need to hear them, who aren't going away when I have a bad day with them. It's really important for addressing burnout that I have this support. So we need to choose friends who are not always negative or discouraging to us, but friends who we know will build us up. And that also means friends who I can trust to say what needs to be said. I need to be a good friend to others. That's the way that I create emotional support for myself also, is when I'm a good friend to others, that is often reciprocated. Tangible support, and forgive me for rushing through this, I am allotted a limited time. Tangible support is, am I compensated appropriately for what I do? Sometimes I might not feel I am, so I need to be willing to ask for what I need. And I may have to leave a job in order to be fairly compensated. I've had to do that during my career life. So that's the extreme, of course. It also might mean I have to develop another means of income on the side. One form is called passive income, where I'm doing something that I don't have to put a lot of ongoing energy in, that just provides a stream of income. So there's different ways to figure out how to develop that. But the first, we start with asking. And unfortunately, there's no way to get around if I don't feel I'm being compensated fairly, appropriately. It's going to feed into my feeling of value, not feeling as valued as I need to. And that's just a cultural message that support, tangible support, is tied to value. And the last is informational support. So what do I need in order to do my job? Sometimes that's information. Do I have access to the information I need in order to do my job well? But it's also about other resources, about having the, academia, it's mostly information, isn't it? But in other jobs, it might be different tools I need. I guess here it would be, do I have appropriate technological help? Do I have Canvas, things like that? Do I have what I need in order to do my job? And also it's about intellectually, do I have what I need to do my job? Am I willing to educate myself? I may need to take the initiative and not wait for others to pour into me, but am I willing to seek out what I need in order to do well? And then continuing to develop professionally, learning and growing, taking advantage of those professional development opportunities, not just because I need to check a box on my activities, but also I want to grow and learn and become a better and better both employee, but also person. I need to continue growing. So those are the 4 types of support we need. And I'm going to come back to this in a little while. But again, ideally, we'd be provided a lot of these things on the job. But it's important that we're really willing to take the initiative to make these things part of our support. If we just sit back and are unhappy when we're not getting them, we're not going to be as satisfied on the job. So sometimes it's stepping out there and going for or seeking what we need. And then finally, and this is a really important piece of it, and this is especially important for those of us in this academic arena, we have to have a healthy rhythm of life. We just have to have this balance. And if we don't, it is eventually going to tell. It's going to play out. It's going to show in a lot of different arenas, physically, relationally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, physically. We have to have a healthy balance. So one of those is work-life balance. Can I put some limits on my work? My husband and I deal with very different job situations. He's also a marriage and family therapist, my poor children, but he works 9 to 5, and then he's off on the weekends. I always have something I'm doing, grading or writing or working on some project. And so it's a lot more of a effort for me to create some space for life beyond work. And so a lot of us in academia have that issue. It's important to play. And that is really easy to let that go. Do I have situations? Do I have people with whom I can have a belly laugh that I just love to be with and we laugh when we're together? Do I have opportunities that I can have fun? For me and my husband, it's kayaking. We love to get out on the rivers and lakes in Tennessee and kayak, spend the day kayaking. Some movies is the thing, or theater. There's lots of different hiking. The important piece is to incorporate something in my day that doesn't have to do with work, but is fun. Another piece, attending to physical health. Am I eating well? Am I exercising? Sometimes it feels impossible to fit it in, but even just a few minutes. And even on those busy days, not throwing the good eating out the window, but hanging on to that. I have this fourth, but this is first, incorporating time with God into each day. And so, again, as you look back, God helps with that esteem support, with that emotional support. And of course, a big chunk of time with God is really important. What happens in that time is God pours into me, and I'm a much different person as I go about my day. But sometimes we can't do an hour, half an hour, even 20 minutes. Sometimes we can only do 10 minutes. And one practice I found is after lunch each day, just being by myself before meetings start for about 10 minutes and going to God, remembering what this is all about. It's just not only about the tasks and getting everything done. I am an instrument of God, and I want to be that in the lives of the students, the faculty, the people I interact with. But it has to be God working through me in order for me to do that. And that's also the inviting Sabbath into our busyness. I had a very wise friend once. I was talking about my schedule and asking her, will you help me figure out what to cut out? And she said, you're a busy person. And I think all of us on this call are. She said, maybe it's about inviting Sabbath into your busyness. And so that's actually when I started the practice of that 10 minutes after lunch, because I'm just going to stay busy. So remembering to have a little bit of breathing space as you go about your day. And then finally, and this goes back to the meaning piece that we talked about earlier, it's recognizing that this is about God. This isn't about me. And if I can keep God at the center of what I do, even though the task or the meeting or whatever I'm dealing with doesn't seem connected with God at all, but if I can remember that my life is revolving around God and being part of what God's doing, that really helps with my feelings of burnout, because it makes it have a lot more meaning than just, again, ticking off the tasks and getting things done. So a couple of practices, and I want to be sure to share these because in my introduction I said I would, but one is the practice of breath prayer. And this is a practice of, as I breathe in, I'm saying one phrase, and I breathe out, I'm saying another. So one, the classic one is Jesus Christ, Son of God, that I say on the in breath, have mercy on me, a sinner, I say on the out breath. But there's also a lot of different ones. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. But we come up with some type of mantra like that, where at the minute before I go into a meeting, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. When I'm standing in line in the grocery store, when I'm frustrated in traffic, any of these situations, I can do this minute practice. And I taught a course of undergraduates on disciplines for Christian living once. And this is the practice out of all the ones we did, 15 different practices in a 15-week semester. But this was the one that many of them latched onto, because, the athletes would say, I do it in the middle of a game. Or I've taught this to all my friends because we can do it all the time. So this is one that we can practice anytime. Another is walking prayer. You know, we've all heard the encouragement, every once in a while, get up and just walk around for a few minutes. That gets the blood flowing. We can also do this with the intent, I'm just going to hang out with God for a minute. I'm going to walk around the building. I'm going to walk around the yard and just remember again. But there's something about that movement that can help still our mind and calm our soul. Another is those questions I was asking earlier, and that's the process is called the process of examining or examination of conscious. But it's what gives me life, what takes life from me. And the things that I think about that give me life, I thank God for. The things that take life from me, I invite God into those things. So either way, it's a practice of centering on God. And then finally, there was a monk named Brother Lawrence who coined the phrase practicing the presence of God. And this is more about a way of being that as I go about my life, I know that God is with me every moment. So if I'm, he was a cook in a monastic community. So as he was washing the pans, he was thinking about God. As he was putting on his clothes, as he was part of the service. So it's about just remembering. And so that one is about knowing that God is with me every moment and I'm just different. So all of these practices, and then back to the slide of all those different things, if we attend to them, we're much less likely to experience burnout. And if we're in the middle of burnout, it's going to help us get out of it because we live so out of balance that sometimes we just crash emotionally and mentally. So again, last words, just want to help us remember in regarding burnout, it doesn't always have to be our environment that is helping us get out of it. Again, it would be ideal if we had that esteem, emotional, informational, tangible support from our work environment. But I have some agency in it too. And I can address each of those and make sure they are in place. And then finally, if you are experiencing burnout, don't ignore it. We can just push through so long before it starts taking a toll in a lot of different ways. Again, physically, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, psychologically. So address it. And even if you start addressing it by talking with a friend about it, it's important to address it. So that's what I have. And I'll open it up for questions. And I apologize again for flying through it. It doesn't really seem consistent with a presentation on burnout, but wanted to get you some information.
Jackie, could you explain again how the breathe in, breathe out works? How on breathe in, you're supposed to do one thing, and on the breathe out, if you could explain that again for me.
So again, the classic prayer is Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. So this is from the, I believe it was the early 700s when this was first started, but it's on the in-breath. It's a form of meditation. I breathe in and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, Son of God. And then as I breathe out, I'm thinking, have mercy on me, a sinner. Or other phrases. For me, when I say is, I am the beloved, I love you, God. And so that's just a simple one I've made up to remember that I'm loved and I'm with the God I love. So any phrase, just breathing it and saying those words to yourself a few times just kind of brings us back again. And so much of it is about centering us on God and bringing us back to remembering what this is all about.
Thank you.
Jackie, I was wondering what your recommendation would be. This is something I've been putting a lot of thought into for quite some time. And when it comes to work-life balance, I often even refrain from using the word balance just because I don't know if it's really possible. But even thinking ahead to, I want to retire one day and I want to enjoy my retirement, but I also want to live today. So I think my question to you is what recommendations for developing that discernment for how I do manage my present to truly live with the future in mind, but also the present in mind. And that may be a very broad question, but developing that discernment in how I choose what I do.
Yeah, well, and first, balance doesn't mean equal in terms of time. So, there's just no way to have, unless you count sleep, maybe we should use that. But it's about over time. And of course, there's periods when we have to all hands on deck and we just really have to pour into things. But if that is our life day in and day out for weeks, months, years, that's out of whack. We have to pull back from that in order to address the other things in our life, the relationships, the family, the emotional support. Am I there for others? Am I with people enough that they can pour into me? And so it's, we've all heard the thing that on our deathbed, you don't think about the work you did, you think about the people you were with. And I hope we can think about the work we did as meaningful and part of kingdom work. But it's also about letting myself breathe enough so I can see what's going on around me. If my nose is always to the grindstone, I miss so much that's going on, just in my present context, but in the world as well. So it is a constant discernment. It's about, but it's also a boundary setting, a requirement of myself that, okay, if this next 2 weeks is going to be hellish, then I'm in 2 weeks from today, I'm carving out a day when I can just be with my family or just get away or just take some time for myself. So it's constantly attending to it because it doesn't happen accidentally. Does that kind of address what you're saying?
Yes, I think it's just maintaining awareness. I really liked your idea or point of inviting Sabbath into your busyness. And I think that's something I'm going to strive to do more of. Thank you.
Dr. Halstead, I was wondering how long you think it takes to recover from burnout. So is it a matter of just you make a change and probably not obviously boom, you're better, or kind of are there long-term, effects of the longer you have pushed through, the longer it'll take to recover?
Well, first on the how to recover, it takes time. It isn't an immediate, especially when you're really worn to a frazzle. And again, it's not just the volume, it's I've really lost something in terms of the meaning behind this, which enters into it. So it takes a while, and you don't come back ever exactly the same because it's, there's a little bit of change in your perspective that happens as a result. But you can get back to where you need to, that you're functioning well and finding motivation and joy in what you're doing. One of the repercussions is that loss of buffer, that you can get back there pretty easily, pretty quickly. And so that would be the main one. But it's also true that once you have gone through it and have worked your way out of it, have done what you need to become healthy again. And I use that word loosely, healthy, but you know that pathway back there. For me, a lot of it is hanging out with God, and I get away with that. And then I start to remember, okay, I need to carve out some space because I'm forgetting what this is all about again. And so that's also a repercussion, is you've learned some ways to address it. So both on the good and bad.
Thank you.
Dr. Halstead, I'd love to hear, as you're talking, it's so helpful. I think we all just need to hear this from various times in our lives. With the way that our world has changed so much into the online environment, do you have any tips for navigating burnout in a more of a remote world, either personally or as a leader trying to manage employee, just anything? I just love to hear your perspectives on kind of how online world may have changed how we assess others.
One thing that, and thank you for bringing that up, Megan. Zoom fatigue is real. I mean, it is definitely a thing. And just hour after hour being in front of a screen, in so many ways, it's different. It's not the same as being in a person's presence. You miss that presence piece, but it's good. We've been able to do so much because we do have Zoom. But it affects you a little bit emotionally because of that distance. It also affects us physically because there's less movement. We're sitting in one chair for hours and hours and hours. Then there's that piece about being more intentional about getting up, walking around, walking outside. My husband gave us chickens last year for Mother's Day. It was definitely a surprise. But that's been a nice distraction that every once in a while I'll walk out and see if there's an egg, but so it's, and it's also about making time to be with people. And so, some of us have family members who we can, at the end of the day or during the day, we can go and be with a bit. If you live alone, it's really important that you make time to be with other people so that you just get kind of that presence feed, sustenance. And managing people, it's important one of the repercussions of the online world is it's very task oriented. And, in the therapy world, we saw this where, on teletherapy, even before it was a thing, clients just seem to get right to the issue. There's, usually in person, there's a little bit of chit chat and stuff, but when you're on the phone or on the computer, you get right to it. And that's kind of the same with online business. We much more get right into it. And so as a leader, it's important to step back a bit, find ways to connect with people relationally, even in the online, ask about their life, what's going on. But that has to be an intentional piece that is brought to it. But yeah, it definitely impacts people. And I'm really curious to know how, from a research standpoint, what will come out as we move away from the pandemic in terms of mental health impact and all that.
Thank you.
Jackie, I was just thinking about your list of the healthy rhythm of life and looking at those.
Hi, Amy.
Hi, Jackie. And how I think that there is guilt associated with several of these things. So, because I think our culture pushes back, like, why are you saying no to this thing? or why are you not participating with this? Or whatever, or like that this play seems frivolous, right? But I think about, for myself, the people who I respect the most have evidence of these things in their life because it comes across to me as healthy. So even though I might be like, oh, I really wanted them to go do this thing with me or whatever, if they're like, no, I need to say no for this reason, I have a ton of respect for that. But there is a lot of cultural pushback, I think. And so that was something I was just thinking about. And then the other thing is that I do believe what you were sort of saying about how our body tells us that we need things like Sabbath and these rhythms for healthy, full beings. I realized that many, many years ago, and actually now set an alarm on my phone for early on Sunday afternoon.
Good for you.
As this is Sabbath, and I will be just doing things at home, but I don't go places. And I've said no to a lot of things that I feel kind of bad about sometimes, but I know that I'm better on Monday morning if I've said no to things and given myself that window of time on Saturday. So those were just some thoughts that were rolling around.
Yeah. Well, and to your first point, I think it's important we recognize the way we contribute to that, like you're saying, where sometimes we don't want to respect someone's boundaries, or we have this let's compare how busy we are kind of thing, that we're sharing all the things we're doing, and that's really valued and admired. And so just saying attaboy when okay, good for you not coming, or whatever. But anyway, just recognizing our contribution, especially in academia, of we push each other till we drop. Thank you, Amy.
Jackie, Joe chatted, it wasn't a question, but along the lines of what Amy was saying is how we can feel guilty for taking that time for ourselves. And it is many times in opposition to our culture. So, Joe mentions just like taking a bike ride or other non-work related activity, because there's always something to do. So I try to go by the mantra of feel guilty and do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, and to Amy's point too about I just have to decide, okay, I'm going to lose that cool point, or I'm not going to be as admired because I'm not going to attend meetings in the next 2 days, or whatever. We have to just be secure in ourselves enough to be able to say, I got to take a breather.
Jackie,
Any other?
do you think that sometimes